But let's talk about first disassembly. All right, swap lenses here. Ooh, let's get some lighting a little bit closer. There we go. So for general disassembly, first we're going to make sure that the rifle's unloaded. We do that by pulling out that magazine, pulling back the bolts, observing down the chamber. Yes, we're empty. Okay. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's put the trigger on safe here. Ooh, it is that hard. Oh man. To put the next step here is going to be to take this trigger and kind of swivel the guard up and over. Then to pull this out, I can do this with just by hand, but not on camera from where you guys are sitting. So just to make this easier, I've just got a basic punch here. I'm just going to slip it through there and then kind of use it to pry it up and out. There we go. Once that's loose, you can then kind of wiggle this thing out so it's looser on some than others. And there's our complete trigger group. If you want a quick way to get this out, just support the back of the rifle, the stock. Just give it a light tap right here. And what that'll do is loosen up the action out of there and pull it right out. Recoil spring, it's just this little pin here that's attached to this other pin that's going down there. So just grab the recoil spring. You're going to get dirty, so maybe grab some gloves if you do this. But pull the recoil spring back just to relieve tension on it. Just grab that pin and push it back. And that's going to release this guy here. Now you can pull it up and out. And there's our recoil spring and recoil spring guide. Now to pull your op rod guide out, what you'll need to do is get it back to this slot right here, and that'll correspond with this tab that's kind of right where the handle is. And we're going to just pull it back there, kind of pull it up, and just kind of wiggle it. Let's see. There we go. And pull it out. Now you can see that that thing's off the track. And what I can do is basically rotate it up and out. And what I'm doing there is just kind of clearing this part over here. And then I've got my op rod handle out. To pull the bolt out, it's kind of in this judo ninja position in here. And what we're going to do is just kind of like pull it up. It's way easier pulling out than it is putting it back in. But just kind of like twisting it and pulling it out. You shouldn't have to wrench against any metal. It should be a fairly easy pull out. And once you've got that out, you can kind of look forward to the gas plug here. You may need to use your wrench from your cleaning kit, or just any old wrench that you kind of have hanging around that fits. I believe this is a 3/8. It shouldn't be too tight. This is not meant to be torqued right on there. There's our gas plug coming out. This is nice and convenient to clean. This is kind of what I was talking about for accuracy. This is not good for accuracy, having this so loose. But to get out our actual gas plug, we'll just go, or sorry, piston. I'm just gonna get that out there and pull that out. This is one thing that'll get dirty and you might need to clean every once in a while. So that's basic field stripping of the Norinco M14. Next, I wanted to talk about some of the accuracy mods that people do for it, and a lot of it kind of focuses on the bottom half of this rifle here, the piece that I'm showing you guys right now. Now let's get that in position. Basically, so on an AR-15, all the action is all straight, but when you look at this guy right here, you can see a problem in that it's not straight. The recoil impulse is coming back right on here. And that's pushing out through this guy here, transferring to this bar, out to the bolt. This is a lot of angular motion, I guess, that's involved in here that we need to push against. So that's going to work against us on our parts, and it's going to work against us on our accuracy. So let's kind of start from the back here. And I'm just going to talk about mods first, and then we'll talk about some of the different things that you can buy. But let's talk about the stuff you can do. The first thing that you might want to look at is this this guide back here. This is kind of what the op rod zings along as it's going back and forth. And if it's not straight, you can see that, here, let me just get it up here. If it's not straight on with this gas piston as it's hitting it, it's going to be a little bit off kilter, and it might bind in here. It might not do the same thing all over again. You know, with accuracy, you're always looking for your rifle to always do the same thing. So I'm just going to adjust here. So we're looking for repeatability. And this guide here, on some of these rifles, and I don't know if you can see it here, but this one will actually move. And if it can move like that under finger pressure, imagine what happens when it's actually firing a .308 cartridge. So this is something that some guys, what they'll do is they'll drive that pin out, they'll pull it back, they'll kind of punch little divot marks around the barrel on this thing, and then they'll hammer it back on. Idea being those little divot marks around the barrel where this thing's supposed to sit. They'll make it so that they hold it in place and it doesn't move anymore, so that that guide is doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is guiding, instead of giving a general idea of what should be happening. So that would get our op rod to be guiding just a little bit better. A lot of the other ones focus on the gas system up front here. And if you've probably noticed this problem already on this rifle, this gas system lock should be tightening at the 6 o'clock position. Here, let me just get that right up so you guys can see it. Here we go. It should be tightening as it's kind of coming around, and it should be tightening right here on this gas system. Instead, it's tightening right over there. That's way too far. So what some people will do, and this is probably the easiest thing to do, is to get shims for it. You can buy these shims commercially, or you can make them. And they just go between this piece here and this piece at the back. And the idea is to make it so that it's harder and harder, and finally this thing locks in place where it should be, which is at the 6 o'clock position. So that's kind of accuracy mod 1 that you might want to look at in terms of just stuff that you can do for free. A couple of the other ones you might want to look at. One is actually unitizing this band here, this band that kind of mates up with the receiver. It's actually loose, and the idea here is mating that piece with this piece here. Now I'll put some instructions on here, but and these are not mine. I'm pulling these straight from Canadian Gun Nuts. The idea here is to mate these guys with some welds, and on the Norincos, this gas tube here, this is a chromoly, so you'll need to get a welder that's capable of chromoly molding the gas tube to this front band. Again, the whole idea here is unitizing, making this all nice and unitized and always going to be repeatable as we're using it. So we've got that gas ring here, we've got this unitized, we've got our guide here doing what it's supposed to be doing. The next thing that people will do if they're intending on keeping the Norinco barrel is to index it properly. A lot of these, what has happened, these are actually designed to fit in just so. So as you kind of turn them in, they're turning into a specific position, and a lot of them aren't at that position. And you can tell, let me just pull it up here. Let's see how close we can get to that. You can tell by looking at the front sight usually, because the front sight's going on this block up here, and you can kind of see how far off your indexing might be by how far off the front sight is. This one you can see is a little bit off, and when you look down the sights, it's a little bit more apparent how far off it is. And that's something that is outside of my capabilities. I would need a gunsmith to help me out with that. For a barrel that's over-indexed, you would need to reverse it back, somehow get that metal to, I don't know, give you some more resistance as you're cranking it down, so you can crank it down and not go so far. If they're under-indexed, that's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to remove metal than it is to add metal. So you can remove metal from it to re-index it properly in place. Some people will ream the flash hider out or use a different flash hider entirely. That can be a little bit harder as well because some of these are welded on, either silver, some of them might be silver soldered, some of them might be welded. It's got a castle nut on it, which not many people have a castle nut wrench in their toolbox, so you might need to buy or make one of those to undo this castle nut, and then you might need to beat the living crap out of this thing to get it off. M14.ca has some replacement flash hiders for this thing that you can see on this thing. This isn't even a flash hider. It's solid. They haven't even milled out the slots for the flash hider. Although some of them do have these milled out. Hey, if you're going to do it anyways, this might be your opportunity to pull the dang thing right off and replace it with a compensator or something that's a little bit cooler. That's nearly it for all the free mods. I wanted to show you guys one that is very easy to do at home, and it's to work over this safety here. Now, normally you'd have this in the rifle, and just pretend for a minute that I do have it in the rifle, just for argument's sake. The idea here is to put on a show, and like a TV show, and just sit there and work this safety back and forth, and so you don't chew up your finger and get it pinched between the slot and the safety here, you can use a pencil or a pen or something like that, and just to work it back and forth. Oh man, it's so hard. This one I can tell it hasn't been used a lot because man is it ever tough. And the whole idea, just work that stupid thing in until the safety is halfway usable instead of a total piece of garbage. Now let's talk about a couple of the things you can do that you can buy for this rifle. There's a ton of things you can buy for it. Again, keeping in mind that we're using this nice forged rear receiver here that we have that is a little bit stronger than some of the cast versions out there and a lot cheaper than something like an LMT or a better aftermarket one. A couple of things that people will generally do. The first thing that they might want to do is replace this guy right here. This is the op-rod spring guide. And as it works on the spring, it's not generally all that straight. And beyond just accuracy, this is also just a little bit, I don't know, makes the rifle feel a little bit better. Just having that spring coil in on the spring guide a little bit better. So that one's really cheap. That's generally a $40 part, so it's not going to break the bank, and it is going to make you feel a little bit better about using your rifle. Another one that some people do is choose a USGI bolt. These Norinco ones generally have a little bit of slop on these lugs here. They're not as tight as they could be. And that's where getting a USGI bolt and getting a gunsmith to install it and do the headspace properly and all that good stuff might help you out just a little bit more. And the third one that is generally done for if you're going to do an accurate M14 is to replace the barrel entirely. An aftermarket barrel is going to be better than this one, so that is something that some people look into. Now for reassembly, we're just going to do the exact opposite of what we did. The flat part here of your gas piston needs to be facing towards the barrel as you slide this guy in, and if you want to, you can just wiggle it down and you'll see it pop out the bottom here. That's how you know it's in the right position. You just put it a little bit more back up there. We can put our gas plug in from the top. I'm just going to finger tighten it now. Just keep in mind you will want to torque it down just a little bit with a wrench. I'm not quite sure of the torque specifications, but snug, but definitely don't really reef on it because it's going to be hard to get out. This part is exposed to gas, so you wouldn't want to get a bunch of carbon buildup in there and never be able to get the damn thing out. Next, we're going to MacGyver this bolt into place, and it generally, let's see how I can more easily show that. It's generally going to go just kind of like that. Let's see. There we go. Do I have you in? Almost. There we go. And you can see it's just a little bit of finagling to get into place, but it's not all that bad. If you really practice with this thing, you should be able to do it with your eyes closed. The next up is our op rod, and we're just going to slide that guy in there to start with. When we get to the rear, let's pop this guy right over there. What we're going to do here is just kind of get this roller here is what the part that we want to mate up with the op rod handle. We're going to get that op rod handle kind of back here and just kind of like look on the inside of this thing and see where it's meeting up with that op rod handle, and where you need to mate in with there. So I know I need to push it right about there, and then just kind of pop it in. There's not a lot of resistance there. Some of these are a little bit looser than others, and that's kind of it. Now to get this spring in and the spring guide, we're just going to start by feeding this into the spring into that recess. Taking the spring guide, and we're going to face it so that that pointy part is down. It's facing towards the barrel. Pop it in there. Make sure that piece is open, and we're going to wiggle it into place. This is a lot easier if you're not on camera. And now that we've got it there, just pull back slightly until you can push that pin forward, and now it is captured. This is kind of what I was talking about with the spring guide, and if you can watch that spring, you see what it's basically hitting against my op rod here to straighten it. And it's making that spring grinding sound. That's just from the spring hitting this op rod handle. So if you get a different op rod guide that's a little bit rounder, what it's going to do is make sure that that spring is perfectly straight on here. And as you pull back, you're not going to hear that grinding, and it's not going to feel so crappy pulling the bolt back. All right, we're back on the wide angle lens now. So we've got our assembled upper, if you will, and there's our stock. So what we're going to do is take our stock and we're going to kind of mate it right there where that barrel band is. We're going to make sure our lugs are in place and just kind of seat that part down. This might be tighter on some rifles than on others. On the trigger group, there is a ridge, like a rail right here, and that's on the right side of the trigger. And that part has to interface with a piece inside there. You can look, or you can just kind of go off of feel. I don't mind going off of feel, just because I've done this a lot, and it just kind of slides in there. And you can see our trigger is up. It'll kind of go down there, and then you'll slap this part into place. Sometimes you'll need to pull at the trigger this way to get it into that notch. There, snaps into place. Lastly, we'll do our function check. Check, make sure the thing's empty. Oh man, that safety's still hard. Safety's working. Safety off. Nice two-stage. This thing without oil, you can tell it doesn't have any oil in it because it's just so nasty pulling it back and forth. I don't mind that trigger at all though.